Hello. You are welcome to Story World. Jenny and Mark had always dreamed of owning a home together, and when they found an old Victorian house on the outskirts of town at a price too good to be true, they couldn't resist. Their house, with its towering windows, ornate woodwork, and large garden, seemed like the perfect place to start their life together. Sure, it was a bit rundown, but they loved the challenge of fixing it up. The real estate agent mentioned something about the house's history, but Jenny and Mark weren't superstitious. They laughed off their vague stories about the previous owners moving out abruptly and didn't think twice about the place's reputation as their ghost house. The first night, as they lay in their bed, exhausted from moving in, Mark joked, "Maybe the ghosts here will help with the unpacking." Jenny chuckled, her eyelids heavy with sleep. Yeah, a little supernatural help wouldn't hurt. But what started as a joke soon became eerily real. The next morning, Jenny wandered into the kitchen, still bleary-eyed. To her surprise, the dirty dishes from their late-night dinner had been washed, dried, and stacked neatly on the counter. She blinked in confusion, turning to Mark, who was sipping coffee at the table. "Did you wash these?" she asked. Mark shook his head, just as puzzled. "I thought you did." Shrugging it off as one of them having done it in a tired haze, they didn't think much more of it. But as the days went by, more strange things began to happen. The laundry would be neatly folded when neither of them had done it. The floors, once dusty and in need of a good mop, gleamed as though they had been freshly cleaned. At first, they were amused. "Looks like we've got ourselves a ghost maid," Mark joked one evening, tossing his socks into the laundry basket, but things started to take a darker turn when the TV in their living room began to turn on by itself in the middle of the night. At exactly 3 a.m., it would flicker to life, its volume low, showing old black and white movies neither of them recognized. The first few nights, they dismissed it as some sort of electrical glitch, but when it happened every night, at the exact same time, they couldn't ignore it any longer. One night, determined to get to the bottom of it, Mark stayed up to watch. Sure enough, at 3 a.m., the TV flickered on, and as the old movie played, the volume slowly began to rise. The screen flickered, and for a brief moment, Mark could swear he saw a shadowy figure reflected on the screen, standing just behind the couch. He whipped around, his heart racing, but the room was empty. Things escalated from there. The closet doors in their bedroom would creak open on their own, clothes neatly rearranging themselves on the hangers. Their shoes, left in disarray by the door, were found lined up in perfect rows each morning. Their house seemed to have a mind of its own, as though someone, or something, was living with them, cleaning up after them, making sure everything was in order. Jenny, usually the rational one, started to feel uneasy. "Mark, what if the stories about this house are true? What if we're not alone here?" Mark, who had been the one to dismiss the ghost rumors in the first place, found himself at a loss for words. The thought that something otherworldly was in their home was becoming harder to deny. One night, as they lay in bed, they heard the faint sound of humming. It was a soft, melodic tune, echoing through their halls. Jenny clutched Mark's arm, her heart pounding. "Do you hear that?" Mark nodded, his face pale. Their humming grew louder, and with it came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, light, deliberate, as though someone was pacing through their house. Unable to take it anymore, they decided to confront whatever was haunting them. Armed with a flashlight, Mark led the way down the stairs, Jenny close behind. The house was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. They followed the sound into the living room, where the TV sat, dark and silent. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment, there was only the sound of their breathing. Then, without warning, the TV flickered on again, the same black and white movie playing on the screen. But this time, there was no mistaking it. The reflection on the screen clearly showed a figure standing in the doorway, watching them. It was an old woman, her face gaunt and her eyes sunken. She wore a tattered maid's uniform, her hands wrinkled and worn. Jenny gasped, and in an instant, the figure was gone, leaving the room as empty as before. From that night on, the house's activity only grew more intense. Plates washed themselves, the TV turned on by itself every night, and the floors gleamed as if freshly mopped each morning. Yet, despite the helpful nature of these tasks, there was an undeniable sense of dread that filled the air. It wasn't long before Jenny and Mark started looking for a way out. The house, no matter how pristine it was kept, felt wrong. They realized that the ghost, or whatever it was, wasn't just trying to help. It was trying to keep them there. One evening, as they packed their bags, determined to leave, the front door slammed shut on its own. The TV blared to life, and the old woman's reflection appeared once again. This time, she wasn't just watching. She was standing between them and the door, her eyes locking onto theirs, as if to say, "You're not going anywhere." Terrified, Jenny and Mark fled through the back, never looking back as they left the haunted house for good. When they spoke to the real estate agent the next day, they learned that the house had once belonged to an elderly maid who had lived there alone, cleaning the house obsessively until the day she died. It seemed that, even in death, she couldn't let go of her duties. They moved far away, but the memory of the ghostly maid lingered. Sometimes, in the dead of night, they could still hear the faint hum of her song and the creak of footsteps, as if she had followed them, ready to clean once more. Moral of the story: whenever you move into a new apartment, always pray or call a pastor for prayer, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.